Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 295th episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast, and welcome back to the show. Last time in episode 294, I talked about the Lilac Review and why it's so important. So if you missed that for Disability History Month, do go and check that out. And don't forget, the podcast is now fortnightly. But if you're missing weekly content, you have 6 years worth of episodes to listen back to. And if you want my handy guide that lists most of the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it at bit.ly/DMPG23. While Disability History Month is officially over, I think it's always important to keep the momentum going. Also, acknowledging this time of year isn't always easy for everyone, especially carers. We've had one episode about caring previously, and that is episode 134, Recognising the Needs of Carers with Anita Powell. Do listen to this episode to get her perspective about caring. And even though there has been far more conversations, especially over the last 2 or 3 years because of the Carers Leave Act, it is still a very overlooked topic for people who care for a variety of dependents. As always, let's start with defining what caring and carer is in this context for the episode. Now, when I talk about caring today, I know lots of people are carers, so all parents are technically carers, but I'm actually referring to people who care in more complex cases. While parenting is, of course, included, you'll find that in this episode, we're actually referring to potentially caring for younger dependents with disabilities or specific needs that require support, people who might care for a partner who has a long-term illness, any adult child caring for a parent. When I define it as well, I'm going to be using the Carers UK and the Carers Trust definitions. So a carer is a person of any age who provides unpaid care and support to a family member, friend, or neighbour who's disabled, has an illness or long-term condition, or who needs extra help as they grow older. And a carer is anyone who cares unpaid for a friend, family member due to illness, disability, mental health problem, or an addiction or substance misuse. So slight variations on those definitions. But when you hear or read these definitions, it is clear that it's quite broad. And of course, young carers are a huge issue, but because this podcast is focused on the workplace, I will be looking at adults or people who are of employment age. So carers do hold families together. So they do help people to get the most out of life, and they make an enormous contribution to society and save the economy billions of pounds. Yet carers are stretched to the limit. So juggling care and work and family life, potentially struggling to make ends meet, and of course, battling with poor health themselves, mentally, physically, and emotionally. It is thought that there are currently 5.8 million carers in the UK, and this will be a spectrum. So people who have had to give up their job and are caring 24/7, to people that maybe are able to hold down a job but are doing 7 to 12 hours a week, but it still takes a toll. This could be formally recognised, so someone could be receiving carers allowance, or this could be informal and juggling around all the other responsibilities. And it is thought that every day 12,000 people become unpaid carers, as outlined above. So that's not people that become parents through choice. But I want to focus on employees caring for a broad range of people in this episode. And there's a really great toolkit, and I've, of course, put the link in the show notes, from Business in the Community from 2019. So I'm pleased to say things have moved on from there, but it's still a very, very useful toolkit that outlines what businesses can and should be doing in different areas. And I'll draw on that again later in the episode. But they talk about the business case for supporting carers, which again, I'm laughing because I wish we didn't need to spell this out, but I also know that we live in a world where we do have to do this. So in this toolkit, the things that are outlined are: number one, improved productivity. So when there are policies in place to support carers, there is improved service delivery, cost savings, and increased productivity. And they've got a reference in the toolkit, and it's number 12. So you can go and find out more about how that was referred to and the study behind that. Then the second thing is about reduced turnover costs, because of course, balancing care with work and then having a social life is incredibly difficult, especially if you're balancing work with an unsupportive line manager or a toxic workplace culture, or in fact, a workplace culture that's very rigid. And if carers are not recognised, this is very, very challenging. So the employment rate from this time in 2019 for those aged 50 to 64 who spend more than 10 hours a week caring is 56%. So that's significantly lower for those of the same age without any caring responsibilities. So those with no caring responsibilities, the employment rate is 74% for men and 64% for women. It helps retain and reduce recruitment costs. So we know that that's always useful when for businesses because, of course, acquiring new talent or if there's a revolving door is very, very costly. So if we can support carers in the workplace, this is going to retain those skills and reduce recruitment costs, especially for people who've worked at an organization for a long time. You've got that knowledge that could be lost, that just goes out the door. It's also about improving brand, so the reputational brand, the company brand to attract talent. The pool of people over 50 and those with caring responsibilities is growing. That's not going anywhere. Lots of conversations about what should be done about health and social care. Of course, we've got this long review being done now for 3 years it's going to take, by which point it will probably be redundant when we already have so much information here that I'm citing and things haven't really shifted enough. But demonstrating support for carers can really help attract the best talent. And if we think most carers are between age 50 to 64, and I do think that's going down actually, and are female, especially if you look at our demographics of people having children later in life due to financial and life circumstances, that number is likely to increase. And in terms of the number of people caring, and then the age is likely to decrease. It's not a dead cert, but I think it's probably quite likely. This can also support gender diversity goals. As most carers are still female, we know that women will hold the burden of caring for younger dependents and older dependents. So supporting women in particular to stay in work and helping them balance caring responsibilities with work opportunities can really help contribute towards the gender pay gap. And the gender pay gap is still larger amongst people at the older spectrum of the workforce, so 50 to 64. And then finally, it's about reaping the rewards of intergenerational working. And then we know that this is a big topic. We've got 5 generations working side by side, potentially depending on the sector. And if we can help everyone to manage their caring responsibilities, and younger people are likely to have different experiences than older people. Younger generations are maybe more likely to talk about it compared with older generations. That is a generalization. That may not be the case. But if you have people talking about it in the workplace from different generational perspectives, I think that's very, very positive. You can increase that intergenerational learning. And we know that if you have a workforce that reflects the age diversity of the people that you serve, your service users, your customers, your beneficiaries, your clients, that can only be really, really helpful. And research by the Chartered Institute of Personal Development, CIPD, found that age diverse teams enhance customer service. So another building on the facts, and we've got some really interesting studies that have been done this year by charities. And in June 2025, Carers UK carried out a poll of 2,000 members. So you could say that's not a huge number, but I also don't think it's insignificant. I think it's really helpful. And I think when these polls are done with, a small yet manageable number of people, we can see certain trends that are very, very useful. There was also the Age UK report, which was covered really well in the media about corridor care for older people. Now, if you think about then the carers aspect for that you've got 2 sets of people's demographics, experiences, and caring plays a part in how people then have to manage someone who's experienced corridor care and support them emotionally and mentally. And so then what happens to the carer? But going back to the Carers UK poll carried out in June 2025, they found that working carers often struggled to prioritise their own health needs, and 25% had reduced their working hours to care. 44% of carers in employment said they had a mental or physical health condition develop or become worse since they started caring. And that was 44% compared to those who don't. That was 44% of carers who are in work compared to 37% of carers who are not in work. Carers and former carers in employment were also more likely to say they had postponed or cancelled their own appointments, tests, scans, treatments or therapies due to the demands of their caring role. So that's 33% in work compared to 27% who are not in work. So we're still seeing the cancellation. Those cancelling appointments for themselves said they couldn't find appointments at a time they could attend and were unable to take time off from paid employment for these. So 40% of working carers said they needed more flexibility at work. And previous research by Carers UK has found that 600 people a day have given up work to care, which is a phenomenal number. Caring is a social determinant of health, and data is increasingly showing health inequities between those who are caring for disabled, older, and ill relatives and friends and those who are not. I think the other added element of this is it can be very difficult to talk about this at work, especially when people are saying things like, oh, yeah, I'm going to Bali for Christmas, or we're going to do this, we're having all the family round, we're doing this, we're doing that, And as a carer, you just can't do that. So I think the other aspect of this is the shame, hiding, feeling like you can't really talk, and also worry about unsolicited advice, which, yes, people are well-meaning. Oh, you should just do this. And you sort of think, well, if if it were that simple, do you not think I would have done it by now? So I think there's support. I think that's different to unsolicited advice, and you really don't know the situation that someone is in. I really hope you're enjoying the content of this podcast and want to keep up to date. If you are, then why not join my bi-monthly newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you'll receive my white paper on inclusive language and mental health. And that link is bit.ly/ILMHCK. So, what has changed then over the years? So the first thing is I wanted to mention was that's been quite pivotal, but there still needs to be more work done, is the Carers Leave Act of 2023. And this gives UK employees, England, Scotland and Wales, Northern Ireland is slightly different, the right to 1 week of unpaid leave per year to care for dependents with long-term needs. And it came into force on the 6th of April 2024. So it's only been in about 18, 19, 20 months. Offers protection against discrimination and flexibility for half or full days without requiring evidence of care needs. And the aim is to help people balance work with caring, preventing many from leaving jobs, and covers those caring for someone with a disability, long-term illness or injury for 3 months or more, or old age. So what are the key provisions? And I've used the ACAS summary here for carers leave because I thought it was really helpful. So you get 1 week, 5 days, so 5 working days of unpaid leave annually. It can be taken in full or half days or a single block. It's available from day one of employment. It's protected, so employees taking leave are protected from unfair treatment or dismissal. There's no proof needed, so those that need self-certification. Employers cannot demand medical evidence of the person that you care for. And anyone caring for someone with a disability, long-term illness, injury, who needs care for 3 months or more or needs help due to old age. And employees' dependents can include their husband, wife, civil partner or partner, their child, their parent, a person who lives in their household, but not tenants, lodgers, or employees, and a person who relies on them for care, such as an elderly neighbour. And activities that can be included is taking, for example, a disabled child to a hospital appointment, moving a parent who has dementia into a care home, accompanying a housebound dependent on a day trip, providing meals and company for an elderly neighbour while their main carer is away with work for the day, for example. So these are just examples. The scope is wider than that. Now, an employer might choose to pay their employees for this type of leave, but they don't have to. So it's great that we have this, but again, if people are struggling financially, this is it's unpaid leave, so it's quite tricky. But in order to find out what you're entitled to, you should check your company's policy or organisation policy if there is one. If there isn't one, there does need to be one. Checking your own employee contract and talking to your employee, it would likely be the HR or people and culture team. I think the other thing to realize is most people who are caring don't realize they're carers, because I think often people think of carers as someone who is qualified or someone who's with the person that they care for 24/7. So raising aware of caring and the definition and how the workplace can support them is the very first step. So using the Carers Leave Act and really publicising it is a great way to do this. So what else can be done for carers? I think carers really would like, from things I've read and from information, an understanding organisation that gives carers permission to respond as and when they need to. Now, the pushback here is always going to be about needing to get the job done. It sets a precedent. You've got to balance the needs of the organisation with the individual. And yes, I appreciate that, but it isn't really helpful, and it can be quite a punitive approach, particularly the point about precedent, because yes, everyone's caring journey is different, but when you have to go, when you have an emergency, when you've got to rush to A&E, you really can't keep working. It's a very frightening situation. I think the other thing is around flexible working and paid carers leave to help reduce the amount of leave taken to care. This is a key recommendation. And anyone has the right to request flexible working, but an organisation doesn't have the right to approve it. But I think paid carers leave is essential. And actually just making those 5 days paid would be really, I think, brilliant if you want your organisation to go above and beyond, which I don't think is asking too much. Providing more and better information and signposting to external support can be extremely helpful for carers. And I think the workplace can really be a crucial source of information, because people can access things quite anonymously through the intranet, through the employee assistance program, can look at posters in the corridor. And I think that is sometimes easier than actually talking to, feeling like you have to phone up a helpline. And hopefully someone will get to that point. But if you find the information in your workplace, it can normalize and really help people to do that. The other thing is a carer's pass passport. So this is something in the business in the community toolkit. We've talked about reasonable adjustment passports on the show, just to say, this is who I care for, this is what I need to do when things get difficult, how I'd like it to be managed, who I want to be told, how I want them to be told. But at least that's all written down, and then people have much more autonomy and control about things. I think as well, in terms of HR, people and culture, might be diversity inclusion teams as well, is to have a look at, do you know how many carers you have? So is that something you could ask on your system? Can you raise the awareness and say, we really want to know if you're a carer, because it really helps us to ensure we have the provision for you. Using the statistics to help people come forward. 5.8 million people are carers. We know that some of us will be you in our workforce. And then when you build that, to really have conversations, do surveys, focus groups, because this allows for better interaction, as many carers don't feel that they can really have this conversation in an open space. And surveys can obviously help people be anonymous. You could also think about having a carers champion. Is there someone senior that has been a carer or is a carer and understands? And because I think that's really important. And again, that was definitely a way that mental health and mental ill health was talked about, by having mental health champions in the workplace. And thinking about well-being and satisfaction amongst carers. So if you can get a group of people together, really checking in on their well-being, is there anything else that people could do or need? Often people don't know what they're entitled to. And linking in with local organisations like Carers UK, Age UK are phenomenally helpful at supporting people. Different organizations in local areas, but helping people to realize they can have those communication channels to do that. And then I think, of course, if you haven't got one, is to look at a specific policy for carers or guidance or practice. Might be linked in with your leave policies, but really highlighting that and what carers are entitled to and what they can do and what they have access to. Because caring has real physical, mental, and emotional consequences. And many people you may not know that you might know in the workplace, you may not know that they're carers. The workplace plays a vital role in supporting carers as they may come back to work to focus on something else and have a break. So often people do need time off to care, but maybe they don't necessarily want time off. They want to come into work. They want to connect with colleagues. So having that reassurance, that information is so, so important. Also, not making assumptions about how someone can and could do things is so important, and telling someone, oh, just put boundaries in place. It's not helpful. If you've got to go to A&E, if you've got to go to doctor's appointments, you cannot just put boundaries in. It's very serious. And you also don't want to make someone disclose private medical information about the person they care for, or their own private medical information. So it's really important that we say, is there anything we could do from a workplace perspective that could help? If I gave you a magic wand, what might be most useful in this scenario? As opposed to assuming if you just put boundaries in, they'll stop calling, because it doesn't really work like that. Provide up-to-date advice and support, and highlight trusted organizations. That could be a really good first step. You can tie it into anything. Lots of campaigns throughout the year around caring, and ensuring that your employee assistance program, if you have one, does this too. This is a really easy and simple thing to do. And I would also say going above the statutory minimum of the Carers Leave Act and seeing what you can enhance, and really shouting about it, because there are not many employers that are doing this, and there are not many employers that are doing it well. So if you can get those 5 days in, if you can pay for those, you can promote those, if you can make sure that people feel supported and go above and beyond the Carers Leave Act, that would be great. So creating a positive environment for carers is not only beneficial for the individual, but also boosts morale, engagement, and retention across an organisation. So if you're looking to foster a positive wellbeing culture and would like guidance on creating strategies tailored to your team's needs, then of course we're here to support you. Reach out to me to explore training, consultancy, and coaching services designed to build a healthy, resilient workplace culture. So you can get in touch with me at Leyla, Leyla, at diverseminds.co.uk. And I really hope you've enjoyed today's shows and shows over the last 6 years. And if you have, why not write me a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast from. And I'd love to hear from you as listeners. So you can drop me a line, or you can leave me an anonymous or with your name voice note on SpeakPipe, and that is bit.ly/SPKPDMP. And don't forget my TEDx talk about the connection between culture, race, and mental health in the workplace. It's just 12 minutes long, so something you can watch in your break. And that link is bit.ly/TEDx Wolves, WOLVESLO. So, and those resources for today, episode 134, Recognizing the Needs of Carers, Carers UK website and their report, Carers Week, June 2025, the Carers Trust, the BITC Toolkit for managing carers, and the ACAS guidance on carers leave. So I really hope you are going to have a brilliant season and time off. Don't forget carers, don't forget to ask people who need support, and don't forget to join me before the end of the year when I'll be doing my roundup of the year. All right, everyone, until then, take care, bye for now, and season's greetings.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.